good stewards know we cannot change the past. But if we want to get to heaven, we need to change the present often. Barbara Varenhorst has written a book, and it's called Real Friends. Becoming the friend you would like to have. And in her book is a little story, and I'm going to tell it as a modern parable. Emma has had a rotten 2 or 3 weeks. Everything has gone bad. She's frazzled, worn out. And she has one business trip to make before she can get some rest. But she decides she's going to go to the airport early, and she's just going to sit all by herself, chill out. But no sooner than she sits down than an elderly woman sits next to her. And the elderly woman says, "I'll bet it's cold in Chicago." Emma didn't want to talk. So she tried, by the tone of her voice, to let the woman know she didn't want to have anything to do with it. She said, yeah, I'll bet it is cold in Chicago. But the elderly woman was not turned off. And she kept repeating one-liners to Emma. And all of them had no emotion at all. They were just flat. But Emma's tone kept getting progressively more ugly, really. Letting the woman know by the tone of her voice she did not want to talk. But then the elderly woman, Mrs. Peabody, dropped the bombshell. Mrs. Peabody said, "You know, my husband is on that plane. He dropped dead suddenly. No one expected it. I didn't expect it. He just dropped dead. I'm all alone. They're taking his body to Chicago to be buried." Emma felt as low as a person can get. She realized that she had not been at all Christ-like to Mrs. Peabody. Not at all. She realized that not only had she not tried to be attentive, looking at her with Christ-like glasses, finding out what she could do to help the woman, she had ignored the woman, at least emotionally. So Emma grabbed Mrs. Peabody's hand and began talking with her, trying to give her some comfort. And they held hands until they got onto the plane. When they got on the plane, Mrs. Peabody went about 3 rows beyond Emma. And Emma sat down, and she heard 3 rows behind her, "I'll bet it's cold in Chicago." And Emma began to pray, "Lord, please give your graces to the person who is sitting next to Mrs. Peabody. Help that person to be more like you to her from the very beginning than I was. Help that person to see her as someone in need, someone in emotional agony." Why do I tell that story? I tell it because it reminds me of today's gospel passage. A rich man, so rich he doesn't eat. He banquets every day. Outside at his door is Lazarus, covered with sores, starving to death. All Lazarus wants is the scraps that the rich man throws under his table. It was the custom at the time that rich people had dogs under their table. They would throw them the scraps. They would use bread as napkins to soak up grease and food particles, and they would throw the bread under the table. All Lazarus wanted were scraps, but he got nothing. Lazarus starved to death. Very shortly thereafter, the rich man died. Lazarus went to heaven. The rich man, he wound up in hell. And he was in agony, in torment. And way off in the distance, he saw Abraham and Lazarus standing at his side. And he said, "Oh, Abraham, ask Lazarus to just put his finger in a glass of water and put a drop of water on my tongue. I'm burning up down here." And Abraham said, "No, I'm sorry. The gulf between us is just impassable. I can't do that." Okay, the rich man's in hell. Why is he in hell? He didn't kick Lazarus. He didn't yell and scream at him. Why is he in hell? Because he ignored Lazarus. Jesus is making an important point to all of us. Don't ignore the needy. And all of us, from time to time, do that. And not just to poor beggars like Lazarus, to our spouses, to our children, other relatives and friends, colleagues, people that we run into in line over at Labyrinth. And there's another point I want to make as a result of these stories, and that is we cannot change the past. Kurt Vonnegut has written an excellent book called Slaughterhouse-Five. In it, a soldier is having PTSD. He is in emotional agony because all he can remember is a day in World War II when he was in a major city and it was being firebombed. Bombs raining from the sky. Buildings collapsing all around him. Everywhere he looked, he was in the middle of a firestorm. People were burning to death and screaming in agony. Well, the soldier begins to fantasize. He fantasizes about the fires extinguishing themselves, the burned people becoming whole again, the buildings becoming whole again, the bombs rising from the ground up to the bomb bays of the plane, and the planes flying backwards to their base. And when the planes get back to their base, the soldiers bury the bombs. But the soldier realizes it's just a fantasy. He cannot change the past. When the rich man got to heaven, he wanted to change the past. He couldn't. So the spiritual question for us this morning is, who are we more like? The rich man or Emma, who, like all of us, made a mistake, but changed it in the present. So she recognized that she couldn't get rid of what she had just done, but she could be caring and kind and gentle to Mrs. Peabody. It's our call, all of us. We're all called in the moment to wear Christ-like glasses and to see inside of people. Not just see their material needs on the outside, but see their emotional needs on the inside. And to be as Christ-like as we possibly can to those people. My sisters and brothers, we are all called to be good stewards. And good stewards know we can't change the past, but if we want to get to heaven, from time to time, we must change the present.